a very pertinent question in the wake of the climate change crisis. And just to let honorable members know that climate action is of high priority for government through my ministry. The President chairs the Africa Union Committee for Heads of State on Climate Change. And this September, we shall be hosting the first of its kind climate summit to address some of the issues that are rising, which are becoming a livelihood threat to not only Kenyans, but the global community. Mr. Speaker, heat waves have a very loose definition, and they are defined as periods of hot weather considerably above the average temperatures for a given time and location. And the threshold given for a given location or geographical area largely depends on the local weather conditions, the vulnerability of the people, and ecosystems exposed to heat. Honorable Speaker, it is likely that a number of perceived extreme heat events will occur in regions of the country as temperatures continue to rise in response to climate warming, with thresholds varying regionally. Mr. Speaker, if members have had a time to peruse some of the annexures to my response, they will see a tabulation of projected risks and impacts of climate change on human life, also the risks pertaining to health, and also pertaining to food security and even animals. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the issues raised by the honorable member, in Kenya, like many other sub-Saharan African countries, extreme heat events and attributed impacts such as emergency room visits, hospitalization, human and livestock deaths, and loss of productive hours are not documented, and heat waves are not recorded sufficiently. And few studies have attempted to assess changes in heat waves in various African regions. However, these fragmented studies do not provide succinct and comprehensive information for the necessary decision making. Weather conditions that could result in health risks depend on the sensitivity, acclimatization, and adaptability of the population to extreme heat. And temperatures is the main component of heat, and it also depends on various weather variables. Coming to the exact question on whether Kenya has ever experienced heat waves in recent years, research into heat waves across the world has confirmed that the increasing trends in frequency, duration, and cumulative heat have accelerated since the 1950s due to the climate change. The biggest increases have been seen in the Middle East, South America, and Africa. And they project the deadliest disasters that are getting stronger and more frequent every other day. In the recent past, Honorable Speaker, heat wave events have been recorded around the world, with examples of 3,000 people dying in the United Kingdom, 300 displaced in Italy, 600 people dying in Spain. Mr. Speaker, chronic exposure to extreme heat in the form of seasonal and year-round extreme heat, especially in tropical regions, have far-reaching impacts on health, productivity, and economic outcomes. Generally, public perceptions and awareness of heat in Kenya are very low, and there is therefore need to raise the awareness of heat risks, especially in this country, where we have a substantive number of low-income populations. For instance, due to lack of awareness, heat-related instances and illnesses might have people underestimating these illnesses and the seriousness of heat situations and do not actually then go to hospital when they are required to go. Based on analysis of data from 1975, the year 2022 was the third warmest year on record, tying with 2021 and followed closely behind by 2019 and 2020 as the first and second warmest respectively. Intrigued by undocumented heat waves, cases and concerns of their impacts, our Kenya Meteorological Department recently conducted research to identify high-risk regions, define heat thresholds, and initiate a protocol to operationalize heat wave early warning in Kenya for early action and for purposes of informing adaptation strategies. This analysis showed that recently identified extreme heat events occurred in Kenya in March 2016, April to May 2019, March 2020, and February of 2021. The extreme episode of March 2016 lasted for at least 7 days, with impacts including increases in admission in hospitals in the cities of Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. Another study carried out in 2022 identified extreme heat events of 1991, 2005, and 2012 over Nairobi, Tana River, and Turkana counties respectively. And most heat events recorded in the selected counties were observed to begin around the months of February to March. The study concluded that owing to the established direct relation between extreme heat events and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease prevalence, the observed events ranging from normal to very extreme have had a great negative impact on human respiratory health. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to inform the House on the link between climate change, heat waves, and drought, also known as climate change, heat waves, drought nexus. The impacts of recurrent droughts in arid and semi-arid regions of Kenya continue to worsen with significant impact on lives, health, losses in livestock and livelihoods. And it is highly likely that droughts are coupled with heat in these regions. Increasing trends in temperatures have been observed in recent times. Mr. Speaker, sir, these issues highlighted do compound dry events, heat waves, and droughts, and they change dramatically under global warming, but have never been systematically studied in Kenya. However, it is feasible to state that the livestock deaths associated with long drought were spurred by extreme heat stress on the animals brought out by heat extremes, high evaporative demand that results in low soil moisture and decreased surface water availability. The need to understand the compounding risk posed by the combined effects of droughts and extreme heat events, especially in arid and semi-arid areas of Kenya, is dire. Mr. Speaker, extreme heat events interact with other factors such as exposure and vulnerability and inadequate adaptive capacity, resulting in greater impacts. The associated impacts of extreme heat events on livestock are negative psychological effects of heat stress on animals' metabolism and productivity, and indirectly via increased disease burden, reduced water availability, and inadequate pasture. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the question, to provide the status of records maintained on critical heat wave events experienced in the country, and to clarify whether such records have been used to provide disaster warning, I will say, Mr. Speaker, that the World Meteorological Organization concluded that the past 8 years were the warmest on record globally, fueled by ever-rising greenhouse gas concentrations, accumulated heat, according to 6 consolidated international temperature data sets. Mr. Speaker, the year 2022 was the 8th consecutive year between 2015 and 2022 that annual global temperatures have reached at least 1% above the pre-industrial levels. And in view of this, Kenya started monitoring heat waves from 2022. This monitoring was likewise spurred on by an analysis done in the generation of the annual State of the Climate document, which is annexed in this presentation, Mr. Speaker. And in the initial analysis carried out, examined daily data from 1991 to date and identified the following thresholds for issuing heat health alert warnings in Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa respectively, based on the historical data record. And the thresholds for Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, is that the daily maximum